Hey, this is Andrew, and the video series is intended to share some of the things I've learned about spreadsheets to increase productivity and save time, especially in the nonprofit and education sectors. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I'm not an expert, but hopefully that'll make my explanations a little easier to follow. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments in the comments section below this video, and I'll answer them whenever I get a chance. And remember, you can pause and rewind the video at any time if I go a little too quickly. So we're learning to build a budget in Google Sheets. Although a lot of the same ideas are applicable in Excel, I choose to use Google Sheets for reasons that I mentioned in a previous video, but in general it's easier to collaborate among people, and it has some expanded features that are helpful, and to be honest, I'm just more familiar with Google Sheets. So we started with spreadsheet basics in lesson 1, then moved on to the introduction to functions in the last lesson. In this lesson we'll focus on cell formatting and conditional formatting. So that's going to look like this. The objective is going to be colleagues will be able to change the appearance of cells, numbers, and use conditional formatting. So let's look at the budget that we're slowly kind of building out. And in previous lessons, we took a basic listing of amounts in categories. We created subcategories. We formatted the cells. We centered them. We extended the numbers using the fill feature, which takes a pattern that's established and extends it. And then last lesson we looked at how to use formulas to take the average of a group of cells or to add together groups of cells. And we also used relative reference and absolute reference, so that this part of the equation changes when we use the fill feature or we copy and paste, but this cell reference stays the same throughout. And that allowed us to take these monthly totals and subtract the same number from each one, even as we copied the formula over, because the relative reference changed and the absolute reference did not. Okay, so in this video, we're going to focus on making the numbers look cleaner and more professional, and we're going to do that by learning how to do these changes. We're going to make the numbers look like dollar amounts. We're going to change the format of the month. We're going to have any negative numbers be automatically highlighted in red, and we're going to create a little table, a little analysis of each of the budget categories and what percent of the total budget that budget category represents. So those are the things we're going to learn today. Let's start by focusing on making these numbers look like dollar amounts. You can see we've got a bunch of decimals over here, and we don't have any dollar signs. So we're going to go up into the Format, Number, and you can see we've already got a bunch of useful options. We can have it be at 2 decimal places. Format, we could have it be percent. But these are the ones that are interesting, right? Financial and currency. But you can see that both of them have the decimal places. So let's see what financial formatting looks like. It just has the 2 decimal places, and then negative numbers are in parentheses, which is useful for some purposes, but I think what is going to be best for us is going to be the dollar sign there. But I don't really need these decimal places because I don't have any cents to display here. So I'm going to go down into More Formats and click on More Currencies. And you can see I've got, this is the basic format right here, and I can apply a bunch of different currency formats here. But what I'm interested in is clicking on this option, and I can see right here it gets rid of the decimal places. So I'm going to click on that and click Apply. And that is looking more like what we want it to. It's a little cleaner, and it's got the dollar sign in front of it. I'm going to go ahead and center these numbers so that it kind of matches the rest of them. And then we're going to deal with the months next. We want to format these months, so instead of having it be the first of the month, we want the 3-letter abbreviation of the month, and then we want the 4-digit year. And I'm going to go back into Format, Number, and you can see we've got some date options here. I don't really like any of these, so I'm going to go down again into More Formats, More Date and Time Formats. And here you can see we have a 3-letter month and then 4-digit year format, and we can play with that all we want. We can change it to be the month with the leading 0, month as abbreviation, month as full name, etc. I want the just the month abbreviation, and I'd rather have a full numeric year there. So I'm going to apply that, and boom, it changes those months. I'm going to show you real quickly. I noticed that down here in the target budget, this one stayed the same because I didn't have it highlighted when I changed the number formatting here. I want to show you something that's really useful for instead of going through all those steps to change just one cell's formatting. We're going to use something called the paint format. In Excel, it's called the format painter, and it's a slightly different brush icon, but it's the same idea. And all it is you click on the cell that you want to use that format. I have this formatted the way I want, and I'm going to click on the paint format button. You can see it gets selected there. And I'm going to click on the cell or cells that I want to have the same format. And it just copies the format that we applied here all the way over here. And you can see that if I do that same thing with this cell format, which is bolded, it will do the same thing there. But I kind of like that bold number. So you can apply, but remember that if you apply something with borders on it, it'll also apply those borders, so it'll be in a square. So I probably just want to keep the bolded number. And that's an easy way to take a format that may have been more complex to set up and apply it to one or a group of cells. So remember that next time, paint format. All right, the last thing that we're going to focus on for just kind of number formatting, and then we'll talk about conditional formatting, is we want to construct this table of totals for each budget category and then calculate the percent of the total budget. And we're going to review a little bit of our formulas to be able to do that we learned, the functions that we learned last lesson. So I'm going to start by just getting these budget categories to be listed down here. And I'm going to get these three. I'm just going to copy and paste, save a little time typing. And then I would copy and paste the supplies, but watch what's going to happen. It's going to paste that that merged cell. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And I'm going to double click on this merged cell, and I'm just going to select the text. And I'm going to copy that text. And then I'm going to come down here and paste just the text. Oh, you know what? That didn't work either. I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to type in supplies. But then it doesn't look like the other one, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the one above it, Format Painter, and now it looks the same. And I'm going to go and do the last two budget categories, put them down here. Now I want to know what the total amount of salaries and benefits that we've spent so far is. So hopefully you remember how to use the sum function from the last video. You type equals so that the program knows that you're about to write a function. And then sum. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And it shows you an example of what it'll look like, and it kind of explains the formula. But once I have this format, I can just go ahead and select the cells that I wanted to add together, close the parenthesis, press enter, and there I have the total salaries and benefits category, all of those numbers added together. And I want to do the same for the rest of them, but if you remember, the fill function lets us drag that formula down, and it will, because it's using a relative reference, it knows that if I drag it down a level, it's also going to drag the cells that I'm referencing down a level. So that's a handy way to save some time. Watch what's going to happen next, though. When I drag this formula down another row, it's going to be dragging it down just one more row, but look at this. It's not doing the total supplies because the one below it is just the office supplies. So that's not actually what I want. So I'm going to highlight these cells, this range that's being selected. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to select by hand the totals, because that is the total amount of supplies in the budget category, and I'm going to press enter. And that'll give me the right number there. And then, since this one is now referencing this row here, I can go ahead and fill that function down, and it continues the trend so that it's giving me the right numbers to add together going forward. All right, so I've got all of these budgets. I'm going to go ahead and center those. And now I want to know what the total budget is. And so I'm going to go ahead and add in a total here. And then I'm going to, maybe you can already imagine what I'm going to do to add these together. I'm going to use the sum feature function again. And I'm going to sum, just these numbers. Close the parenthesis, and there we have it. And I want this to be centered too. And I kind of want to bold it so that it stands out a little bit. And this total, sometimes I like right justifying it so that it stands out a little bit. So here we have the total budget spent so far in this project and the budget categories. Now I want to know what is the percent of salaries and benefits out of the total budget. And so as you can imagine, we can use the function to just do the simple math of dividing that budget category divided by the total, and that is going to give us the percent. But as you can see, it's just doing the math, so it's just giving us the number that you get when you divide those two numbers. We want this in a percent format, and that we can do in the format number, and we can go down to the percent right here. But I don't really want those decimal places, so I'm going to go down into more formats, custom number format, and it gives me a lot more options, including just a regular percent with no decimal places. I'll apply that, and now we got the 68%. So 48,425 salaries and benefits takes up 68% of the total budget. I'll center that. And now, as you can imagine, I want to do that for all the rest of the categories. But if I try to fill this down, watch what happens. I'm going to get an error. And if you figured out why, then you probably realize that it has to do with the relative reference that we're using. Watch what happens if I look at what that did. It definitely did the right thing by picking the number right below, because I want to get the rent utilities, but because I was using a relative reference for this total number, it dropped the cell that it's referencing down one also. But this I want to stay the same the whole time, even as these change. I'm going to go back to the original formula. I'm going to take this G22, this total cell, and I'm going to make that an absolute reference. And there's an easy, quick trick. I showed you in the last video. You can put in the dollar signs, but there's another way to do it if you want a little faster, and that is to press Control F4 or just F4. It's Command F4 if you're on a Mac, and it's just the F4, the function 4 key if you're on a Windows machine or a Windows keyboard. Now I have that relative reference of the budget category and an absolute reference to the total amount. And with that, I'm going to press Enter, and then I'm going to fill the function down, and it's going to give me the right numbers. Now I want to check my math, so I want to make sure that all these percents add up to 100. Over here, I'm just going to write equals sum, and I'm going to add these together just to make sure it equals 100%, and it does. So that's just a way to check to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. So now I have each of the budget categories, and I have a percent calculated for that number out of the total budget. Last thing that we're going to talk about is conditional formatting. Conditional formatting just means that cells are formatted based on color or font or size or bolding or underlining based on what appears in that cell. It's a really easy way to automatically apply formatting based on the values. And the way I'm going to use it in this example is I want negative numbers to stand out, because I want us to know when we are under budget or over budget, or however you want to apply it. So I'm going to select all these numbers here, and I'm going to go up to Format and down to Conditional Formatting. And then something pops up on the side. You can see it's already applying kind of a default formatting here, and we can see that this is applying it to a particular range of cells, so it's only going to apply it to these cells in that range. And here's where we get to decide the rule for how it applies the formatting that we're going to decide. Right now it's applying a formatting anytime the cell is not empty. So if it has anything in it, it will apply the formatting, and right now the default is that it's just a highlighted green. We want just negative numbers, so I'm going to go and choose a different rule. You can do it if the text contains a symbol or a letter, if the text does not contain something, a lot of different things. You could do it if the date is before or after a certain date, but what I want is that anytime it's less than 0. So anytime that a cell has less than 0, it's going to apply this formatting. You can see it's already started to do it. It identified the cells that are less than 0, and it is only applying the formatting to those cells. And I don't want it highlighted green, I want to highlight it red, and that's actually just one of the options here, even though I can go into custom format and change a lot of different options. I'm just going to choose the default one there. And now you can see all of the numbers that are above 0 don't have that formatting applied to them, and those below 0 do. So I'm just going to click Done, and I can add another rule to say that if it's equal to If the cell value is equal to 0, I want to highlight it as yellow, and that'll just highlight the $0 cells as yellow. Well, I don't really care about that. I was just showing you that you could apply multiple rules to the same selection. I'm going to cancel that. So the only rule that's applied right now is just to this range of C4, column C, row 4, all the way through column I, row 13, and it's turning anything red if the value is less than 0. You can close out of this tab and it will keep that happening. So let's test that. Let's say this 135 changes to a negative 135. Press enter, and all of a sudden we can see that anything that is negative turns red. And these turned red because I actually just split the total in half between candy and office supplies. So I'm going to turn this back to positive 135, and it goes back to positive numbers, and it's not red anymore. Okay, so in this video we learned pretty briefly just how to change the way that the numbers appear, especially in terms of currencies. We learned how to change the format of how dates are displayed. We learned how to format cells in terms of percents, and we did a little bit of practicing with our formulas and functions. And then finally we learned how to apply conditional formatting so that if a cell has a particular value, it applies a particular formatting so that numbers stand out a little more. If you have any questions, let me know, but hopefully this has been helpful. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to generate charts and graphs using Google Sheets.